Hello, it's Mrs. Stevens at a PowerPoint. I'm going to run through the ideas for planning your Macbeth essay. It's divided up into three parts. The first part, understanding the question. The second part, looking at the AOs. And the third part will be looking at how to annotate the actual extract. Have fun and enjoy. Right, I know it sounds absolutely obvious, but what you actually have to do is you have to read the question. And I'm going to show you how to read something actively, not passively, so that while you're reading, you are underlining and you are learning to think about what the actual answer to the question will be. Just above the extract, you find a huge clue for your answer. Here, there is information about where the extract comes from, and then it also tells us who is speaking and also what has just happened in the play. So then we can place the extract. Part beneath the extract is where we find the question itself, and that's the part that we need to break down into keywords. Looking at the question, I think that the main key words that we're looking for here are powerful and woman. They are the words which are going to take us to the theme that we are exploring. Well, I'm reading through the extract, but I'm struggling a bit because, yeah, I can find some sorts of things to do with power, but not really. I think I'm going to have a rethink. Hello, welcome back. Now we're going to have a little look at the next bit. Yep, that's right, the AOs. Yep, these are the little bunnies that we need, but these are the bits that we seem to forget all the time. I don't know why, because when you think about it, this is where we get our marks from. So we need to have a quick reminder of what each of the assessment objectives means. Here's the oversimplified definitions for the assessment objectives. AO1 is basically knowledge about the whole play and being able to use quotations. So for this one, we would need quotations about Lady Macbeth being a strong and powerful woman at the start. Obviously, she becomes much less powerful as the play goes on, and that might be a good link to connect this part of the extract to another part. AO2 is knowing about the literary devices that Shakespeare used and explaining how they make us think what we do about Lady Macbeth and her personality. So we need to be able to identify if it's a soliloquy, if it is an imagery, if it's dramatic irony, all those keywords, what we include here, and we say Shakespeare uses. And then AO3, obviously the context of the time it was written would affect the meaning and how Shakespearean audience would have seen the role of women. They would not expect to see a powerful woman on the stage on her own presenting a soliloquy. Right, I'm going to make this even more simple for you because basically what we're going to do is we're going to cheat. I'm going to give you the list of all the things that you could possibly look for each of the AOs, and then you can pick out, say, 2, 3 of those to look for when you're annotating the extract. I'm actually, as you can see, in the garden doing this because I'm doing it quietly so Mr. Stevens doesn't know that I've given you all the answers. So you might want to look at, say, 2, 3 of these areas, depending on how much depth you're going to be writing in. An obvious one would be power in terms of status, and I'm going to be referring to that later in the third PowerPoint. Lady Macbeth's power in terms of her relationship. Again, remember these AOs all link to each other, so her relationship and her power would connect with AO3, because it would be very unusual for somebody at that time to have that much power within a marriage. Lady Macbeth is a powerful, effective character in the play. Without her, there's not really much of a story, and the plot doesn't develop, which goes on to the next point, how Lady Macbeth changes as the play develops. How does she change? How does that power get lost? And then I've identified here the 3 main areas that you can contrast for knowledge about the play. How she appears in Act 1, how she appears in Act 3, and how she appears in Act 5. AO2, we're talking about Shakespeare and his craft, and also identifying techniques. So talk about Shakespeare using Lady Macbeth to influence the plot development, that is, the structure of the whole play. The use of language to suggest Lady Macbeth's desperation for power. What type of words does she use? Can you bring in the idea of the semantic field? The use and effect of imagery of the supernatural. Wow, that one really does link with AO3, doesn't it? And the use and effect of pronouns to just suggest power and control. This last one, again, I'm going to be going into in some more detail. AO3 is all about context. And again, you only really need to link these ideas in when you're explaining your quotations. So, for example, ideas about power and how it is achieved and perceived. But how did they consider power at that time? Who did they consider to have power? For example, the king, the divine right of kings. What about the ideas about the role of women? Why were they so shocked to see that woman on the stage on her own, producing a soliloquy? And so it goes on. The idea towards the supernatural compared to what we might think today. Firm belief in the soul, heaven and hell, linked completely and entwined in everyday society. Ideas about equality and status. Who was in power? Who was looked up to? Other people. Contemporary reception towards Lady Macbeth's behaviour in this speech, in actions elsewhere in the play. That's an interesting one, because perhaps today, perhaps we have a little bit more sympathy for her than the Shakespearean audience would have had. I wonder. Nearly there. Last part to go. Have fun. I'm going to see if I can show you how even the smallest of words can fit into both AO1 and AO2, and even at push some AO3. I'm going to look at the third line, and I'm going to look at the word my. My is a personal pronoun, so this would show that the battlements or castle belong to Lady Macbeth, demonstrating her status, her power and status, which is one of the suggestions for AO1. Hear drums in the background, that's just my daughter. With the word my, rather than just explaining that it's a pronoun, if we refer to it as the personal possessive pronoun, and we talk about how Shakespeare chooses this personal possessive pronoun, then together we are including AO2 in our explanation for AO1. And again, the possessive pronoun my can be used to be included with AO3 because we are talking about equality and status, her ownership, her possession of the castle. And during the time the play was written, women were not usually seen to be in charge or have control in a marriage, and it would be her husband. So Lady Macbeth referring to her battlements would show the audience just how powerful and high status she is. Did you get it right? The raven represents death and evil power. It's dark and it's ominous. So obviously Shakespeare would use this type of imagery to make Lady Macbeth appear powerful but dangerous. Maybe this is foreshadowing. Let's move on then to what the raven is doing. Why is the word horse used? What sort of image does all this give? Can you link raven and horse to any of the AOs? I'm thinking AO2 and AO3. So here's my annotation of the first 3 lines, which I'm going to turn into paragraphs. I've taken the idea of the animals and the nature and the imagery of nature, and I'm going to talk about that and where else in the play animals play a part and behaving in a different way. This is an area I'm really looking forward to talking about. Duncan, how he is powerless here with the word fatal, and when he arrives at the castle there is a sense of dramatic irony because we feel so sorry for him. We know that he's going to die, and we're looking thinking, please Dunky boy, don't go in there, you're not going to come out alive. And then my personal possessive pronoun. Act 5 I'm going to move to for this, and I'm going to think about what does Lady Macbeth have at the end of Act 5. She has nothing. She possesses nothing. She's lost everything. In fact, her mind, her ability to sleep, and then she dies. So she loses her life. She doesn't exist anymore. So we've gone from this really powerful, powerful woman through to non-existence. And those are areas I'm going to use to make some points for my essay. I hope this has been of some help to you. Stay safe, stay well, enjoy. Bye.